the Royal Commission made recommendations or asked the government to take action in 3 particular areas. So on the issue of restraint, on the issue of home care packages and on the issue of young people in aged care. The government has quite clearly said that we would announce action on those matters prior to Christmas, and that's exactly what we'll do.
Senator Colbeck. Senator Keneally, a supplementary question. Order. Senator
Given that
Keneally's
the Morrison government has refused to put the aged care portfolio in the Cabinet, who is leading the government response to the Royal Commission into aged care quality?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think that the fact that the day after the Royal Commission handed down its interim report, that the government was led by the Prime Minister in responding to this matter, demonstrates how important this government puts this matter. So, as Minister, I obviously have responsibilities around the development of policy, working with my colleague Minister Hunt, who's the Cabinet Minister within the health portfolio, and the Prime Minister, quite rightly, takes a significant interest in this matter as well, bearing in mind, Mr. President, that calling this Royal Commission was one of the first things that the Prime Minister did after becoming Prime Minister. The Prime Minister saw this as such an important matter that he called a Royal Commission, regardless of how uncomfortable it might be for any of us, because he saw this as a significant priority for his government.
Senator Keneally, a final supplementary question.
I note the minister has said that the Prime Minister and Minister Hunt are leading the response. Given the reason the minister has this week refused to take responsibility for fixing the broken aged care system, is that because he actually considers it to be the Prime Minister's responsibility to fix the broken aged care system? And what is the point of the Minister for Aged Care if not to take responsibility for the aged care system?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr. President. And to be frank, Senator Keneally diminishes this issue by reading out a pre-prepared answer that was a question that was written out before she even listened to the answer that was taken in my previous answer. This government takes the issue of aged care absolutely seriously. Absolutely seriously. That's why this government, that's why the Prime Minister, Mr. President, called the Royal Commission into aged care. As uncomfortable as it might be for any of us on this side, the stories needed to be told. As the Commissioner said last week, they wanted aged people to have a voice, people who they regarded as not having a voice, and they saw the process that we're undertaking now as being an important part of the Royal Commission process. So this government collectively takes responsibility. Obviously, as Minister, I have responsibility for leading the development
Senator
of policy.
Colbeck, time for the answers expired. Senator Murray-Smith.
My question is to the Minister for Aged Care and Senior Australians, Senator Colbeck. The Royal Commission into Aged Care Quality and Safety's interim report identified the home care packages waitlist needed urgent action. How long will the Morrison government make older Australians wait for more home care packages to reduce the waitlist?
The Minister for Aged Care and Senior Australians, Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator M. Smith might have listened to the answer that Murray L. Smith. I'm not trying to be. Senator Murray L. Smith, if that suits the chamber. It's a term I've heard in the chamber, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful, so let me put that on the record. Thanks, Senator Smith, for the question. As I indicated in my answer to Senator Keneally earlier, the government has clearly said that it will respond with respect to home care packages prior to Christmas. The Prime Minister said that the day after the interim report for the Royal Commission was released. It's been repeated by other colleagues and it's been repeated by me, and it was repeated by me earlier in the chamber. The government takes this process extremely seriously, Mr. President. We said when the Commission interim report was released that we would consider what it said very carefully. We would take the appropriate policy response, and the Prime Minister announced the following morning that we would invest additional resources into home care packages prior to Christmas. That's what we said we would do. That's what we will do.
Senator, order. Order. Senator Smith, on my left, Senator Smith is on her feet. Senator Polly. Senator Smith, a supplementary question.
More than 16,000 older Australians died in 1 year waiting for their approved home care package. The commissioners were alarmed to find that many people died waiting. How many more older Australians will die waiting for their approved home care package?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. The question actually demonstrates why this government is taking this matter so seriously, why this government has, since last year's budget, invested $2.2 billion in new home care packages, which is why we increased the number of home care packages last financial year by 25%, which for the first time has actually reduced the waiting list. So this government not only takes this matter seriously, it continues to act. We called the Royal Commission because we wanted a forensic review of this industry, this sector more broadly, so that when we did reform
Senator
the sector—
Watt, on a point of order.
On relevance, the minister hasn't answered the question. How many more older Australians will die waiting for their approved home care package?
Senator Watt, I have asked before that there must be at least a claim. Order. Order. Senator Watt. Senator Watt, I have asked before, a point of order on direct relevance is not simply an opportunity to restate the question. It must actually make a claim about direct relevance. And I might say in that example, a particularly loaded question, and given what I said this morning, I would have asked, can you at least wait? That was at the end of a question, and when there are questions loaded with pejorative terms and assumptions, a minister is allowed a lot more discretion in answering than if it is a specific question. And a point of order on direct relevance should make a claim of what the direct relevance is rather than simply read out part of a highly loaded question. And the minister was being directly relevant, given the question, in my view. Senator Wong.
Thank you, Mr President. The point of order is direct relevance. And whilst I appreciate, and the opposition does appreciate, your exhortation not to simply reread all of the question, sometimes reading the relevant part is necessary for direct relevance. And Senator Watt and the opposition and many Australians are extremely frustrated at this minister's refusal to answer questions about this serious issue. We had an interjection from the government before. This was a stupid question. Well, it's not to a lot of Australians. Where there is a question that, in all honesty, Senator Wong, I do allow people to raise points of order. There must be the claim of direct relevance before there's a restatement. There was not in that case. And I might also say, realistically, given that particular question that was reread, I don't think anyone expects that a minister is not going to be allowed some discretion in answering it, given that is a highly loaded question and a minister is entirely able to challenge the presumption in the question. There is an opportunity for debate after question time. It's not my role to determine the merits of answers to questions. It is not my role to determine the merits of questions themselves. Senator Colbeck, to continue.
Thank you, Mr President. And the government, in taking this matter seriously, in calling the Royal Commission in the first place, so that we could develop a policy platform that built an aged care system that is fit for purpose in this country, does take this matter seriously. We want to see older Australians getting the services that they need when they need to get them.
Senator Smith, a final supplementary question.
Will this minister take responsibility for delivering the urgent action called for by the commissioners and promise to bring forward the government's response so that older Australians aren't forced to keep waiting for the care they so desperately need?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. I've already said a number of times in the chamber today that the government has listened to what the Royal Commission has said, particularly in the context of the 3 urgent items that the Commission said we should address. And I've said that we would take action prior to Christmas. Directly answering the questions that have been asked of the government. Now, I've also said that we will go through the proper policy development process to develop that response. So, Mr President, we will do all of those things that we've said. We are not going to play tricky inside the bubble tricks.
Order
we are
on my
left.
Order on my left. Order on my left. Senator Colbeck, I have Senator Cormann on a point of order.
I know it's the end of the week, but understanding orders, constant interjections, in fact interjections full stop, are disorderly, and the Leader of the Opposition doesn't cease interjecting, and now she's actually haranguing the Minister across the table.
I was calling the chamber to order as you rose on several occasions. Thank you for your assistance. I would ask senators to hold their breaths for the next 25 minutes of question time. Order. Senator Colbeck, you have 12 seconds remaining.
Thank you, Mr President. The Royal Commission report also said, in respect of home care packages, that it wanted to ensure that the policy in developing that process was done properly, because just putting new home care package numbers into the system doesn't necessarily resolve the problem.